Picture this. You have a thought that is just utterly lodged in your brain.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right, like an unhelpful, grinding thought. Maybe
Yeah.
it's a sudden, hot flash of anger at a friend who made a passive-aggressive comment. Or, this intense, burning craving to buy something you absolutely cannot afford.
Yeah, those are the worst.
And you shouldn't be dwelling on it. So you deploy the standard advice, right? You try to replace it. You force a pivot.
Classic misdirection.
Exactly. You try to focus on something positive, like you think about your upcoming vacation, or you try to just change the channel in your mind, but your brain completely refuses to let it go.
It just clings to it.
Yes. You push the thought away, and the second you blink, it snaps right back into the center of your attention, just demanding to be felt. So what is the backup plan? Like, when replacing a bad thought with a good one just completely fails, what is the actual mechanism for getting your mind back?
That is the big question.
Welcome to today's deep dive. If you've ever felt held hostage by your own rumination, you are in the exact right place.
I mean, it is the most universal human frustration, really. We all have these moments where we're actively wrestling with our own minds and, frankly, feeling like we are losing the match.
Definitely. And if you joined us for a previous deep dive, you might remember we explored Chapter 1 of the Vitakasana Sutta, specifically Majjhima Nikaya 20.
Right, the foundational text.
Yeah. And that chapter laid out the very first method of handling unwholesome thoughts, which is the replacement technique. But today, we are moving into Chapter 2, which is the second method.
And it is a very different approach.
Completely different. Instead of running from the thought, we're going to learn how to actively reflect on the drawbacks and the consequences of unwholesome thoughts, specifically looking at desire, anger, and delusion to cultivate a state of lasting inner peace.
It's powerful stuff.
Okay, let's unpack this. If replacement is such a foundational tool in mindfulness, why doesn't it always work? Like, why do we even need a second method?
Well, because some thoughts aren't just, passing clouds. They are deeply entrenched neural grooves.
Okay, neural grooves.
Yeah, I mean, in the Buddhist framework, we understand that certain unwholesome thoughts are backed by the momentum of lifelong repetition.
Oh, wow.
Right. Every time you've indulged in a specific type of craving or reacted with a certain type of defensive anger over the years, you've essentially carved a riverbed in your mind.
That makes so much sense.
So when a new thought flows down that exact same path, it has the force of a flash flood. Simply trying to drop a happy thought in front of it, it isn't going to hold back the water.
Because you can't just wish away a deeply ingrained habit. Like, it requires something much stronger than just a simple pivot.
Exactly. So the Buddhist specific instruction for this second method is to deliberately pause. You have to stop and examine the disadvantages of continuing to entertain that thought.
So you face it head on.
Yes. The instruction is to reflect, and I'll just quote the text here. These thoughts are unwholesome. They are blameworthy. They lead to suffering. Instead of blindly riding the wave of desire or anger, you force yourself to stop and look clinically at where this mental momentum is actually taking you.
These thoughts are unwholesome, blameworthy, and lead to suffering. That is incredibly direct.
It doesn't pull any punches?
No, it doesn't. But the mechanics behind it make sense when you look at how habits compound, right? I mean, you start with a single tiny seed. On its own, a fleeting thought of annoyance or a quick urge to buy something, it seems totally insignificant.
Mostly harmless.
Right. But if you water that seed with your attention, it sprouts. You dwell on it, it becomes a mood. You marinate in the mood, it becomes harmful speech, it becomes the harmful action.
It virals quickly.
Yeah, and suddenly that tiny seed is this massive, deeply rooted tree of damaged relationships and just, personal suffering.
And that progression is entirely predictable. It's just cause and effect.
Yeah.
But applying this method requires a very delicate psychological balance.
How so?
Well, when you're sitting there reflecting on how your thoughts are blameworthy and leading to suffering, the goal is absolutely not to shame yourself.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up because I have to push back here for a second.
Go for it.
Because if I'm sitting on my couch obsessing over a bad habit and I start repeating to myself that my thoughts are blameworthy and causing suffering, my instinct is that I'm just going to spiral.
Right. It sounds heavy.
Yeah. How is this reflection fundamentally different from just anxiously overthinking our own flaws? Like, doesn't this framework risk generating a massive amount of guilt?
That is such a crucial distinction to make. Guilt is, well, it's just another form of mental agitation, It's actually a form of self-obsession.
Interesting.
Yeah, the purpose of this reflection is absolutely not to create fear or shame or guilt. The purpose is to develop wisdom,
Okay, wisdom meaning.
meaning seeing reality clearly without all that emotional distortion. You aren't judging yourself as a morally terrible person.
Yeah.
You are acting as an objective observer, just recognizing the mechanics of your own mind.
So it's less about self-flagellation and more about stepping back and becoming like a scientist in your own laboratory.
Exactly.
You're just observing the data. Like, if I push this button, it shocks me. Therefore, I should probably stop pushing the button.
That is the exact mechanism. You are breaking the illusion of the reward. Because unwholesome thoughts survive because they secretly promise us something. They promise comfort or vindication or pleasure. This method forces you to look at the actual data and realize the reward is a lie.
Which naturally brings us to how this method actively disarms specific mental states, starting with desire, which the Buddha refers to as loha, right?
Yes, loba.
Let's look at a scenario we all know way too well, craving something you just cannot afford.
Oh, a classic.
You're scrolling on your phone late at night, you see a wildly expensive piece of tech or maybe a designer jacket, and suddenly you are obsessed. The craving promises you that if you just click buy, your life will be upgraded.
You'll finally feel complete.
Right, you will finally feel satisfied.
Desire always operates on that false promise of ultimate satisfaction. But the second method intervenes here.
How does it do that?
Instead of feeding the craving by imagining how great you'll look in that jacket, you pause and ask really penetrating questions about the reality of the transaction. You ask, will acquiring this object truly give you lasting happiness?
Which, let's be honest, is usually about 48 hours of excitement before it just becomes another thing sitting in your closet.
Right, and then you have to look at the compounding nature of lobha. You ask, will this craving simply give rise to another craving?
Oh, man.
Because the psychological reality is that acquiring the object rarely actually satisfies desire. It usually just resets your baseline.
So true. You buy the expensive tech, and immediately you need all the premium accessories to go with it.
Exactly. The craving didn't end, it just evolved.
And then there's the material cost, asking yourself, am I sacrificing my financial security or my peace of mind for a temporary hit of dopamine?
When you lay the questions out like that, it completely dismantles the illusion.
It really does. You start to see that craving is essentially a con artist. Like, it promises happiness, but the actual measurable product it's generating in your body right now is anxiety.
Yes, dissatisfaction and a sense of lack.
You are agonizing over not having the thing. Recognizing that the craving is causing you active distress in the present moment is what actually kills the desire.
What's fascinating here is how both desire and delusion rely entirely on our willingness to ignore reality in favor of an imagined scenario.
Right.
We see this exact same dynamic play out with thoughts rooted in delusion, or moha.
Okay, moha.
Yeah. In this framework, delusion often manifests as a mind that's entirely overwhelmed by worry, confusion, or fear about the future.
Oh, the classic 3.0 AM doom spiral.
The worst kind.
You are lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, absolutely convinced that a minor mistake you made at work means you are going to be fired, you're going to lose your home, and you'll end up destitute.
That is moha in full swing. It is a complete detachment from present reality.
Right.
So, to apply the second method here, you have to interrogate the fear. You ask, is this thought based on verifiable facts, or is it only based on my own worst-case assumptions?
And when you are in the thick of it, your brain tries to tell you your assumptions are facts.
Oh, it's very convincing.
It is. But if you force yourself to be objective, you have to admit you cannot truly know what will happen tomorrow.
And that leads to the most critical realization. You ask, am I creating entirely unnecessary suffering for myself by living through a tragedy that hasn't happened and honestly may never happen?
Wow.
Both lobha and moha survive by pulling your attention out of the present and into a fantasy. Desire promises a fantasy of pleasure. Delusion creates a fantasy of disaster. But both require you to completely ignore the factual reality of what is happening right now.
So craving and delusion trick us by playing games with our imagination. Like, they pull us into the future.
Exactly.
But what happens when an unwholesome thought doesn't just play tricks with the future, but actually launches a physical attack on your body right in the present moment?
That brings us to anger.
Right? Anger, or dosa. And this is where the framework gets incredibly granular.
Because dosa is deeply destructive. It operates on multiple levels simultaneously.
Okay.
The reflection here begins with the immediate visceral consequences. When anger arises, you are instructed to observe what it is doing to your physical and mental baseline in that exact second. You ask, who is actually suffering because of this anger?
Well, you look inward and the data is undeniable. The mind instantly loses its peace.
It
It
does.
becomes agitated, restless, and just completely incapable of clear thought.
Yep.
You just replay the insult or the unfairness over and over in this rigid loop.
Like a broken record.
Yeah, and your body immediately mirrors that chaos.
Yeah.
Your breathing becomes shallow and rapid, your jaw clenches.
Parade spikes.
Exactly. Your body is dumping stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol directly into your bloodstream, gearing you up for an actual physical fight.
It is a massive physiological event. And if anger is a rare occurrence, your nervous system eventually processes the cortisol and resets. But if anger becomes a habitual response to stress, you are subjecting your body to chronic inflammation.
Which is so dangerous.
We are talking about long-term physical damage here. Poor sleep, digestive breakdown, chronic fatigue, a weakened immune system, and eventually a significantly increased risk of cardiovascular disease.
And this is where the absolute absurdity of our reaction to anger just becomes so clear. Holding on to anger is, it's like keeping your car in neutral and just slamming on the gas pedal.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Because the person who insulted you isn't affected at all, right? They are probably sleeping soundly.
Yeah.
But you are sitting there in the dark, redlining your own nervous system, overheating your engine, and burning through all your fuel.
All for nothing.
Why should you allow another person's fleeting words to hijack your biology and harm your body for days when their actual action only lasted, 5 seconds?
That is the awakening this method is trying to trigger. You realize your own anger is the weapon currently being used against you. But the Buddha encourages us to look even deeper, well beyond the immediate physiological damage, to the long-term kamic consequences.
Let's explore the mechanics of that. Because in the Buddhist framework, how does karma intersect with this physical experience of anger?
Well, karma, fundamentally, is intentional action.
Okay.
Every intentional thought, word, and deed rooted in greed, hatred, or delusion creates karma. When you repeatedly encourage anger, like when you lash out with harsh speech or plot revenge or even just sit silently seething, you are actively conditioning your mind.
You're building a habit.
Yes, you are strengthening the internal habit of hatred. And this specific type of karma, rooted in hatred, is called dosamula karma.
And the immediate result of dosamula karma isn't mystical at all, right? It plays out right in front of you.
Absolutely.
Every time you indulge in hatred, you become a slightly more hateful person. It destroys your friendships. It introduces conflict and tension into your home.
It shatters trust with your colleagues.
Yeah. It just leaves your baseline mental state perpetually bitter.
The present-day results are severe. But the framework also addresses the profound spiritual implications.
Right.
If a pattern of strong, unwholesome karma rooted in hatred goes uncorrected throughout a person's life, that dense momentum shapes their future. The Buddha taught that this can contribute to rebirth in unfortunate destinations, which are known as apaya.
And the framework is uncompromising about what those destinations entail. It specifically lists the animal realm, or Tirtanayoni,
Yes.
the realm of hungry ghosts called Petaloka, and the hell realms known as Naraya. And just to be clear for everyone listening, whether you view these realms as literal planes of existence or as profound psychological metaphors for states of intense suffering, the core lesson remains exactly the same.
The outcome is bleak either way.
Right. Unchecked hatred produces a reality of severe, inescapable torment.
The severity is the whole point of the reflection. You have to ask yourself, is indulging in this momentary feeling of rage worth risking my physical health, my present happiness, and my ultimate future well-being?
When you put it like that, obviously not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you honestly tally up the collateral damage, the fried nervous system, the alienated loved ones, the terrifying kamic momentum, it acts as a shock to the system. Recognizing the immense multi-layered destruction of anger is what sparks a profound psychological shift.
This shift is, to me, the most brilliant part of the entire framework, because it takes us from intellectual analysis to a lived transformation.
Teaches everything.
Normally, when we are angry, we feel completely justified. We wrap ourselves in this shield of self-righteousness. Our entire focus is on the narrative. Look at what they did to me. They are wrong. I am right.
We love that story.
We do. But once you use the second method to observe the soaring heart rate, the cortisol, and the kamic damage, that narrative just collapses.
The perspective completely inverts. You move from the defensive thought, they are hurting me, to the empowering realization, my anger is now hurting me.
That is huge.
You realize that every additional second you spend entertaining this resentment is a second of suffering you are choosing to inflict on yourself.
And as you drop that shield of self-righteousness, something incredible happens. Compassion naturally arises.
Yes, it does.
Which initially, it sounds like a paradox. How do you suddenly feel compassion for the person who just insulted you?
It seems impossible.
Right. But if we look at the psychology of it, self-righteousness requires us to view ourselves as perfect victims and the other person as a one-dimensional villain.
Always.
But when you drop the ego and stop viewing them simply as an antagonist in your story, you realize they are a complex human being trapped in their own mind.
That is the exact mechanism at work. You are no longer blinded by the need to be right. You suddenly have the space to realize that this person lashing out is likely suffering from their own unseen grief or stress or ignorance.
Yeah.
They want to be happy, just like you do, but they are acting unwisely because they are overwhelmed by their own unwholesome thoughts.
You recognize that their mind is just as out of control as yours sometimes is. And because you see the damage anger is doing to you, you realize it's doing the exact same damage to them. So you make this highly conscious, strategic choice. I am not going to let their confusion become my poison.
And as that wisdom takes hold, the physical release is palpable. The jaw unclenches. The resentment literally dissolves because it has no logic left to stand on.
It just evaporates.
Compassion naturally replaces hostility. Not because you force yourself to be a good person, but because you clearly saw that hostility offers absolutely zero benefit. And to crystallize this shift, the Buddha offers a truly unforgettable simile.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this metaphor perfectly captures the visceral reaction we are aiming for.
It's very vivid. The Buddha asks us to imagine a young, vibrant person who takes great pride in their appearance. They're dressed meticulously in beautiful clothes, wearing elegant jewelry, feeling entirely dignified and attractive.
Okay, picturing it.
But suddenly, they look down and discover that the carcass of a dead snake has been draped around their neck.
Oh my gosh, the horror would be absolute.
Immediate and total repulsion. They wouldn't pause to analyze it. They would be disgusted, humiliated, and they would instantly rip that dead snake off their body and throw it as far away as possible.
The genius of that simile is how it applies to our thoughts. In the same way, when we actually use this second method, when we stop and clearly perceive the toxic, impure reality of greed, hatred, and delusion, our minds stop delighting in them.
Yes.
We no longer want to wear this anger. We no longer think our self-righteousness looks good on us. Wisdom strips away the false glamour of the thought.
That's beautifully said.
Just as no one wants to strut around wearing a decaying animal, a person who clearly sees the mechanics of suffering refuses to carry toxic thoughts in their mind.
It changes your relationship to your own mind. What once felt seductive, the rush of desire, the vindictive thrill of anger, the familiar groove of worry, it now reveals itself as a heavy, rotting burden.
Yeah.
You drop it effortlessly because you finally see it for what it truly is.
So let's take this ancient framework and put it into practice today. Because this isn't just theory, it is a highly practical tool. Let's say a colleague criticizes your work unfairly during a team meeting.
Happens all the time.
Your immediate instinct, the habit you've built for years, is to defend your ego. You want to stew on it all afternoon, draft a passive-aggressive email, and replay the interaction while you're trying to fall asleep.
The standard protocol.
Exactly. But if you apply the second method, you don't try to force a smile and pretend you're fine. Instead, you look at your elevated heart rate. You notice the heat in your chest. You ask, is spending the next 6 hours feeding this hatred going to improve my work? Or am I just creating bad karma and a terrible Tuesday evening for myself?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the power of this method is that it cuts off the fuel supply to our most destructive habits.
The attention is the fuel.
Yes. By carefully and objectively reflecting on the consequences of these thoughts, we withdraw our attention. And without the fuel of our attention, the thoughts lose their momentum, they wither. And in the space they leave behind, wisdom and inner peace are able to firmly establish themselves.
And it works just as well for the digital traps we fall into. Like, you receive a wildly unfair, hurtful text message. Your thumbs are practically hovering over the screen, ready to fire back a devastating reply.
We've all been tempted.
Oh, absolutely. But you pause. You look at the dead snake. You realize that hitting send while your body is flooded with adrenaline isn't going to heal the relationship. It's pouring gasoline on a fire.
It never helps.
It never does. You realize that retaliating will only guarantee that your mind stays agitated for the rest of the night. By honestly mapping out those consequences, the burning urge to fight back just runs out of oxygen. You put the phone down and you protect your own peace.
This raises an important question for anyone listening. How much of our daily suffering is entirely self-inflicted, simply because we allow our thoughts to run on autopilot?
That is a heavy question.
We rarely stop to check the destination of our own mental momentum.
So, what does this all mean? Let's bring everything we've uncovered today into focus. The profound takeaway from the Vitakasana Sutta's second method is that when a bad thought won't leave, fighting it or pasting a fake smile over it won't work.
No, it won't.
You have to dismantle it with truth. You have to critically examine its physiological and chemic consequences until your mind naturally drops it in disgust. By doing this, you aren't just managing symptoms, you are fundamentally reducing your stress, you're short-circuiting impulsive decisions, and preserving your relationships.
It gives you agency. You have a practical on-the-go tool.
Yeah.
The very next time you feel a spike of road rage or a sudden wave of craving for something you don't need or a spiral of anxiety about tomorrow, you have the ability to pause and simply ask, where does this actually lead?
You are never helpless against your own mind once you know how to observe it. And that leaves us with a final thought for you to ponder on your own, taking everything we've explored just one step further.
Let's hear it.
We began this deep dive talking about the frustration of a stubborn thought. But knowing what we know now, that our thoughts are not just harmless internal static, but are actually powerful, causal forces that dictate our heart rate, flood our bloodstream with hormones, and carve the long-term karma that shapes our future. Could it be that the greatest, most vital act of self-care isn't about managing the external world around us, but becoming fiercely, unapologetically protective of what we allow to take root in our own minds? Think about it. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.